It's the worst of the CBC for December 16th, 2019, the show where I watch the CBC so you don't have to. Okay, it's good to be back after a busy week. So, today on the CBC, we had an important update from the finance minister, which says the economy is doing great. Now, despite all the numbers and reality on the ground of it being far from the truth, we are getting reports that it is doing great. Now, the CBC basically, Top Stories, Bill Morneau got up and said, although the numbers aren't great, we had a great, job growth. We created 400,000 jobs. Now, not to mention the amount of people, the growth of the country being more than 400,000 people in the last country. We created 400,000 jobs. Now, we lost 71,000 last month. Now, or as I said before, and I covered this a couple months ago in this job report, that number is highly inflated. Now, one, unemployment is a terrible statistic because it doesn't take into account people who are not looking for work. So there's a significant amount of unemployed people who aren't counted in the unemployed statistic, which means it really needs to be reformed. It's the worst economic statistic there ever was and ever will be. But going into it, when we look at the unemployment rate and the type of employment and jobs being created, most of the jobs being created of that 400,000 that they're pushing are part-time jobs in Ontario and Quebec. Okay, so they're not full-time private sector jobs across the country. A lot of it is part-time stuff. And I was like, are they not going to say this? But then they did a feature like later in the episode or the hour where they were talking about like the gig economy and how most of these jobs are actually like just gigs that pay on average like over a year like $4,000. Like, so it's they did kind of talk about it, but it's like this bizarro world in CBC where like it's like, are you not gonna like, they do kind of talk about it, but they don't then like relate it back to that jobs report. So like they cover these two linked stories where one story really shows the truth of the other, but then they don't like link them. Like it's up to me to like tie it together. So just bizarre. And it was like, like the report was like, Bill Morneau says the economy's doing great and they expect a lot of growth in 2020. And this is great. Then they show the numbers. And remember, by 2019, the budget will balance itself. You were like $24 billion in debt. The projected debt was like $12 billion. It's grown by X amount of billion. We have more and more deficits. But it's going to come down to $11 billion by 2024. Don't worry. Okay, so that's like, I mean, it's basically... It's literally like saying, my grandmother says that this show is the best one in the world. My grandmother highly recommends this show. Then we have to go into the fact that Daniel's grandmother, is she biased? Probably. Does Daniel's grandmother know how to work a computer by herself? No, she doesn't even have one. That would mean my uncle would have to come over and show her this show. Then she'd have to put her hearing aids in. It would be on a little phone. She wouldn't be able to hear it. She'd see my face and say, oh yeah, I like him. That's literally Canada's endorsement. Basically, Canada's endorsement is Canada's grandmother thinks Justin Trudeau is very handsome. That's the economics report. That's what's being put out on CBC. That's literally the level we're dealing with. So let's get to the biggest omissions of the day. And there could have been a billion different things. I mean, they covered the Trump impeachment stuff. And I'm going to stick steadfast on this is I'm not going to go in depth on the impeachment again. I've done it once. It's so stupid. I'm not going to get into the impeachment in any actual detail until we get to the Senate. And then hopefully it gets a bit spicier as Adam Schiff is forced to testify. Maybe we can release Adam Schiff's phone records to the public. That would be hilarious. But as I've said, this whole Trump thing right now is just weaponized stupidity by everyone. So we're going to drop that. There was a standard misinformation about India's citizenship bill because Muslims are angry, so we have to do that. I mean, basically, it acknowledges that non-Muslims in the Muslim-majority countries surrounding India, they have better refugee claim than the Muslims do. Like, this was part of, like, Trump's executive order on immigration back in the day, the Muslim ban. And one of the things that it said that they took out, which was one of the best things, was they were saying, if you're going to claim religious discrimination as a refugee thing, we will prioritize people of religious minorities in countries that say they're being discriminated against on the basis of religion. What a sensible thing to do, right? So if you're in Pakistan and you're a Sunni Muslim and you're claiming, religious discrimination in Pakistan, well, we're not going to take that claim as seriously as we would someone who's Hindu or Sikh who are being kidnapped. Their girls are being kidnapped, forced to convert, and raped into fourth wifeitude. So that makes sense. And of course, Pakistan's upset, but we don't look at what Pakistan's laws are. We just look at what India's proposing as a law. So we could get into that. I mean, there's a whole host of things. I want to talk about this on Wednesday, but the birthplace of Jesus, Bethlehem. The Islamists in the West Bank and Gaza are actually now taking over Christian land. Like, people think of like, oh, do you know, like, there's less than 1,000 Christians left in Gaza? So I'm going to talk a bit about the ethnic cleansing of Christians under, regimes that are primarily anti-Semitic. So I want to talk a bit about just how many Christians are being slaughtered around the world and focus on Christian religious sites in Bethlehem. But I'll do that in depth on Wednesday's show. Just everything else is just, any important story you can think of in the world, they weren't covering it. Like, they're covering the UK thing. Like, why did Jeremy Corbyn lose? How about because he's radically far left, a raging anti-Semite and pro-terrorist? Well, no, it could have been the media. It could have been Brexit. I'm so excited for Brexit to happen. Brexit's going to be so great because it's going to show the global left that was panicking over, like, Brexit's going to destroy. When Brexit doesn't destroy the world, it's going to just kick in the balls of the radical narrative. And then there was just some vaping panic, classic CBC vaping panic. By the way, this show, it's now sponsored by Vaping, okay? Like, if there's a vape company that wants to sponsor this, fine. I'll get every kid smoking vapes for you if you want. Kids, if you're watching this, turn off your Xbox, turn off your Atari, go outside and just start vaping, okay? Vape, you do the double vape, buy 2 vapes. Vape it up, okay? Vaping is now good for you because, strawberry flavored, it's fruit, okay? Fruit is good for you, which means strawberry vapes are good for you, okay? I'm officially declaring vaping is good for everyone. Everyone should be vaping now. And if you don't vape, you're going to end up on the CBC. So think about that. And what does it get in the Rosemary Barton scale? Maybe we should have a scale of Rosemary Barton vaping. But I get 7 out of 10 Rosemary Bartons. And remember, kids, vaping saves lives.